What if love does not arrive the way we were taught it should, following predictable paths and acceptable timelines, but instead appears quietly between two people who were never supposed to meet in this way? A relationship between a young man and an older woman often unsettles people, not because of anything inherently wrong within it, but because it challenges deeply rooted beliefs about age, gender, and power. Society tends to examine these relationships through suspicion rather than understanding, focusing first on numbers instead of emotions, assumptions instead of realities. Yet behind every glance of judgment is a story that begins the same way all love stories do, with two people discovering a connection that feels honest and unexpectedly real. For many young men, attraction to an older woman is not about rebellion or novelty, but about emotional safety and depth. An older woman often carries a sense of calm confidence shaped by lived experience, by lessons learned through both success and failure. She is less likely to play games or perform a version of herself for approval. Her communication is often clearer, her boundaries firmer, and her understanding of herself more grounded. To a young man navigating uncertainty, pressure, and expectations, this presence can feel stabilizing, even reassuring, like finding clarity in a world that constantly demands answers he is still discovering. From the perspective of the older woman, the connection can be equally meaningful. A young man may bring curiosity, emotional openness, and a willingness to listen without preconceived conclusions. He may offer admiration without intimidation, affection without conditions. In a culture that often equates a woman's worth with youth, being genuinely desired and emotionally seen by a younger partner can feel affirming in a way that goes beyond ego. It is not about reclaiming the past, but about being fully alive and valued in the present moment. These relationships rarely begin with age in mind. They often grow out of conversation, shared interests, and emotional resonance. Laughter comes easily, silence feels comfortable, and over time a sense of familiarity develops that is difficult to explain but impossible to ignore. Age becomes a detail discovered later, not the foundation of the bond, and by then the connection already exists. What draws these two people together is not a number, but the way they make each other feel understood. One defining characteristic of young man-older woman relationships is the absence of rigid roles. Traditional expectations about dominance, dependency, and emotional labor often feel irrelevant or outdated within these partnerships. The woman is not expected to shrink herself to protect the man's pride, and the man is not pressured to perform strength at the expense of vulnerability. Instead, the relationship often finds balance through mutual respect, where each partner contributes emotionally rather than conforming to prescribed roles. Communication becomes central, not optional. Because these relationships already exist outside social norms, couples are often forced to talk openly about their feelings, boundaries, fears, and expectations. This honesty can create a level of emotional intimacy that many conventional relationships never reach. Conversations are deeper, intentions clearer, and misunderstandings addressed rather than ignored. In this environment, emotional growth becomes a shared experience rather than an individual struggle. Still, no relationship exists without external influence, and the world rarely stays quiet. Friends may express concern framed as protection, family members may question motives, and strangers may judge without context. The couple often becomes a subject of speculation, reduced to stereotypes that ignore the reality of their connection. These reactions can be exhausting, especially when they come from people whose opinions once carried weight. One of the most persistent assumptions is the idea of imbalance, that the older woman must hold power and the young man must lack agency. While imbalance can exist in any relationship, it is not determined by age alone. Power is shaped by communication, consent, emotional awareness, and respect. In healthy relationships, power is shared, negotiated, and acknowledged. When both partners enter the relationship as equals, age does not define control. Life stage differences can present genuine challenges. A young man may be focused on career building, identity exploration, or financial growth, while an older woman may be prioritizing stability, reflection, or long-term security. These differences require honesty rather than avoidance. Successful couples do not pretend they are at the same stage, they accept the differences and decide together how to move forward. Growth becomes possible when both partners are willing to adapt rather than resist. Time itself becomes a quiet presence in these relationships. Conversations about the future may feel heavier and more urgent. Topics like health, aging, long-term commitment, or family planning may arise earlier than expected. These discussions require emotional maturity, particularly from the younger partner, who must be willing to think beyond the present and take responsibility for the implications of his choices. When handled with honesty and care, these conversations can deepen trust rather than create fear. Despite the challenges, many young man-older woman relationships thrive precisely because they are chosen deliberately. Entering a relationship that defies social norms requires intention. It is not casual or accidental. This sense of choice often strengthens commitment and emotional investment. When two people choose each other with awareness, the bond can feel especially meaningful. Facing judgment together can also build resilience. Couples learn which opinions matter and which do not. They develop a shared strength rooted in trust rather than approval. Over time, the noise from the outside world may fade, replaced by confidence in the truth of their connection. What once felt intimidating becomes manageable, even insignificant. Emotionally, these relationships can offer balance. The older woman may provide perspective during moments of doubt, helping the young man navigate uncertainty with patience. The young man may bring energy and optimism, reminding his partner that curiosity and growth do not expire with age. Together, they may create a rhythm that allows both to expand rather than compromise themselves. It is important to recognize that not all such relationships are healthy, just as not all same-age relationships succeed. Age difference does not guarantee wisdom, nor does youth guarantee immaturity. What determines the health of a relationship is the presence of respect, empathy, honesty, and accountability. When those elements are absent, the relationship suffers regardless of age. When these relationships end, they often leave a lasting imprint. The young man may carry forward a deeper understanding of emotional connection and communication. The older woman may leave with renewed openness and vulnerability. Even when temporary, the relationship can be meaningful, shaping how both partners view love and themselves. At its core, society's discomfort with young man-older woman relationships reveals more about collective fears than about love itself. These relationships challenge traditional narratives about gender, aging, and control. They ask uncomfortable questions about why certain connections are celebrated while others are scrutinized. In doing so, they expose the fragility of social rules that claim to define love. Love, when genuine, resists categorization. It evolves, adapts, and surprises. It asks people to see each other as individuals rather than symbols. When two consenting adults choose each other freely, communicate openly, and treat each other with care, their relationship deserves the same respect as any other. In the end, the story of a young man and an older woman is not a story about age. It is a story about connection, courage, and choice. It is about two people willing to step outside expectation to explore something real. Society may always have opinions, but relationships are lived from the inside, not observed from the outside. What matters most is not how the relationship appears, but how it feels to the people within it. Love does not ask for permission. It asks only for honesty, respect, and the courage to be real.